Let's give a round of applause to Bob Cunningham from Hamilton County Sheriff's Pipes and Drums. Thank you, Bob. Good morning, everyone. I'm Bill Moran, President of the Library's Board of Trustees. On behalf of the Library Board, I'm pleased to welcome all of you to the Library's 64th Annual Veterans Day Commemoration. We're here this morning to pay special tribute to our veterans and to honor all members of armed forces who have steadfastly served our country in both wartime and also in peacetime, and who continue to protect us while serving in the military today. And thanks for joining us. Would everyone please stand as the Diamond Oaks JROTC presents the colors. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing for the national anthem performed by the Cincinnati Symphony Orchestra's brass quartet. Please be seated while the audience, while the Cincinnati Symphony Orchestra's brass quartet will play Men of Ohio by Cincinnatian Henry Fillmore, which was written for the men of Ohio serving in President Warren G. Harding's cabinet. Thank you very much. That was great. Good job. At this time, I'd like to introduce several special guests who are joining us today. Please stand as you're introduced. First, I'd like to introduce library trustees. First, Honorable Nadine Allen, Robert Hendon, Monica Donath Conan, and Elizabeth Lamacchia. I'd also like to introduce Paula Brem-Heeger, the newly appointed Eva Jane Romaine Coombe, Director of the Public Library in Hampton County. I'd also like to extend a special thanks to the Friends of the Public Library and the Library Programs Fund for their outstanding support, not only for this program, but also for many others that they make possible throughout the year. Here representing the Friends of the Public Library is Jim Jones, a member of the organization's Board of Directors. Thank you, Jim, for all your help. It's our privilege today to honor our veterans who have protected our freedom by their duty, courage, and selfless service. There are approximately 45,000 veterans currently residing in Hamilton County. We'd like to recognize those of you among us today who have given themselves in service to our country. Our veterans, active duty service members, guardsmen, and reservists. Your sacrifices and those of your family have helped keep our country safe and free. At this time, I'd like to invite all those who are currently serving on active military duty to please stand and be recognized, and stay standing, please. Would all veterans who served in World War II please stand and remain standing? Thank you. Would all veterans who served in the Korean War now please stand and remain standing? Would all the veterans who served in Vietnam please stand and remain standing? Would all veterans who served in Iraq and Afghanistan please stand and remain standing? Okay, would all veterans of our armed forces now please stand and remain standing? Thank you. Thank you all for your service, and please be seated. We would like to recognize each branch of the United States military, the Army, the Navy, Marine Corps, and Air Force, and Coast Guard. The Cincinnati Symphony Orchestra's Brass Quartet will play Armed Forces Salute, and ask that you stand and be recognized and your service song is played. Thank you. Veterans Day is very special for all of us connected with the library. When the main library opened in 1955, it was dedicated as a war memorial in honor of the servicemen and servicewomen from Hamilton County who gave their lives for their country. The names of the nearly 3,000 veterans who died while defending our freedom from World War I to the present are included in the 2 volumes of the Book of Homage, which are on display in the atrium. Facsimiles of the Book of Homage are available to anyone who would like a copy after today's program. During your visit to the main library, we invite you to take time to view the 2 new exhibits commemorating the end of World War I. At the 11th hour, 11th day, 11th month, 100 years ago, World War I ended. Over 4.7 million Americans fought in the Great War, including 350,000 African Americans and, for the first time, women. Remembering the Great War, commemorating the end of World War I, located behind you in the atrium features information and memorabilia from World War I. Over here and over there, Cincinnatians Fight the Great War, located in the Joseph S. Stern Cincinnati Room on the 3rd floor, includes photographs, scrapbooks, propaganda posters, newspaper accounts, and uniforms from Main Library's collection. Before I introduce our keynote speaker, I'd like to encourage all the veterans in attendance today to consider participating in the Veterans History Project. The Veterans History Project, which is coordinated by the Library of Congress, collects firsthand accounts of those who defended the United States during wartime. An official partner in this project, library staff recruits veterans and volunteer interviewers, records interviews, and sends duplicate copies of recordings and documentary materials to the Library of Congress for inclusion in their archives and national database. Our Veterans History website features a database of locally recorded interviews, documentary materials, and video streaming version of selected interviews. Staff from the Genealogy and Local History Department will be available after today's event to answer questions and sign veterans up for these interviews. And if you haven't seen them or take it upon yourself to do that. It's now my great pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Lincoln Ware. Born and raised in Cincinnati, Mr. Ware is a proud Woodward High School graduate. Prior to beginning his radio career, he attended the Ohio State University for 2 years and subsequently enlisted in the United States Marine Corps. As a Marine, he was a member of the Armed Forces Radio and Television Service and served on the USS Midway aircraft carrier during the Vietnam War. He officially began his radio career in 1973 and currently hosts the Lincoln Ware Show, for which he has received local and national honors. He also makes appearances nationally on XM Radio, CNN, Fox News, and MSNBC. Mr. Ware continues to be honored locally and nationally. A few of his many accolades and awards he has received, including having his name added to the list of America's top 100 talk show hosts for 8 consecutive years, being named one of America's most important radio talk show hosts by Talkers Magazine, and received a key to the city of Cincinnati to commemorate his 30-year radio career. Mr. Ware has demonstrated a strong commitment to enriching the community through projects such as the Lincoln Ware Walking Club, created in order to help promote health and wellness within the African American community. While he has strong commitment to the community and media, his wife Sharon, his children and grandchildren continue to be his top priority. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome me in joining Mr. Lincoln Ware.
Thank you, thank you. I can't tell you how shocked I was and how honored I am to be here today. I was shocked when they called me and asked, would I be the keynote speaker on Veterans Day at the library? I'm like, are you sure you're calling the right person? They said, yes, Lincoln Ware. I said, yeah, that's me. And then I was thinking, what can I talk about today? Well, I figured some amazing things happened to me after I joined the Marine Corps that affected me up till today. And I'll give you that long journey of mine from the day I joined the Marine Corps up until today, and it all comes together in a big circle. You wouldn't believe it. I call myself one of the luckiest Marines ever, because back in 1969, well, in 69, I wanted to be a radio DJ. I was trying my best to break into radio. I didn't have a whole lot of success because everybody had those jobs. Nobody wanted to quit. But they had a thing called the draft lottery. I don't know if any of you remember the draft lottery. They would take, if you were born from 1944 to 1950, they put birth date, they put 12 months and 366 days in a big tumbler. They were blue capsules. And I had no intention of joining the military service, not at all, until my number out of 366 came up number 14. Out of 366, number 14. So I'm like, oh boy, I'm going to be one of the first to get a letter to report to the Army recruiting depot. You know, I was like, oh man. So I got the letter maybe a week after the lottery. Got my letter, report to the Army. And I said, you know, I really don't want to join the Army. I always loved the Marine Corps uniforms, you know. I don't think there's any uniform in the military that's better than the Marine uniform. The dress blues, the white hat, the blue trousers with the red stripe, it doesn't get any better than that. So I said, I think I'm going to stop by the Marine Corps recruiters and talk to them. And I stopped by there, and they, you know, they made it seem like it was the best ever, these recruiters. They're pretty good at their job. So I ended up giving them my letter and that I received from the Army. They said, we'll take care of the rest, just sign here, and you'll be on your way in the Marine Corps. So a couple of weeks later, I got a letter from the Marine Corps, and I had to come down, take a few tests, and do some, you know, physical and everything. And then they said, well, we're going to send you a plane ticket, and you'll be going over to the airport here, and you're going to South Carolina. I'm like, okay, South Carolina. Parris Island, South Carolina. It's in Beaufort. The city that it's in is Beaufort, South Carolina. So, okay. And there, all my friends were saying, you're going straight to Vietnam. You're going to be fighting. You're probably going to come back with one leg. You're going to get killed. Anything could happen to you. You're in the Marines. That's what they do. They fight. They go in there first and fight, and you're going to be part of that. I'm like, okay, if I am, I am. You know, we'll see what happens. So I got the plane, headed to South Carolina, and they put us on a bus. And it was late at night, and you couldn't see where you were going. I didn't know there was a lot of swamp area there. But all of a sudden, we get off the bus, and then there's yelling like I have never heard in my life. Guys were fainting. They were yelling in your ears. You had to stand on footprints. And I was scared. I was saying to myself, why did I do this? Why did I join? Because it was crazy. So after that, everything they told you to do, they yelled at you. I mean, it was constant yelling. Everything you did was in a hurry. You had to eat breakfast in like 3 minutes. Whatever you didn't finish, sorry about your luck. Finally, you know, after they broke you down and got you used to the Marine Corps life, everything started to be, you know, wasn't as bad as it was the first week or so. I could see what was going on. You know, you get out there, you learn how to shoot an M14. And M16 came later in the training. M14 was for marksmanship. So we did all that. Then we go to Camp Lejeune. And that's when you go to the infantry training. Everything pointed to me going to Vietnam, because everything they were training you to do was like get out there and fight and protect yourself. But if they shoot at you, you shoot back at them. So when it came time for us to get our duty assignments, I just knew I would get the 0300 and head off to Vietnam. That didn't happen. I got mine, and it was a strange number. No one knew what that number was, but it was like sea duty. And I'm like, sea duty? What? You know, I said, oh, I'll be one of the combat troops on the ship that goes up to the shore and get off, and then you're fighting. You know, they take you up to the shore and you get off fighting. That was not it. Sea duty was, I was stationed on an aircraft carrier, the USS Midway, which means Marines were more like the security on the Midway. We were the police of the ship. The ship is just like a floating city, and about 4,500 men on this ship. So I get on the ship, and the first thing I noticed that the ship had a radio and TV station on the ship. I'm like, radio? That's me. I like this. Okay, this is getting interesting. So mainly, they did a lot of syndicated programs, which is much like they're doing today in radio. A lot of DJs would contract with the military, and they would record their shows and send them to the ship, and we would listen to them. But they did want a local flavor on the ship, so I was the local guy. I was the local guy. I knew a little bit about radio because I had wanted to get into radio before I joined the Marine Corps. So I went down, talked to the seaman, and he said, "Okay, yeah, we need you. Let's see what you can do." So I did a little show for him. He said, "Okay, yeah, this will work." So it got me a job at the radio station. I said, "This is all right. I'm in the Marine Corps. I'm not fighting. I'm on an aircraft carrier," which they had it was sort of like being on a cruise, but not as much fun. The galley was open like 20 hours a day because they had night shift and day shift. So the guys who work at night, they had to eat during the, when they get off their shift. The guys in the day, so the galley was open. The galley was open, 20 hours a day. So you could always get food. So I continued with this. I got to travel around the world. First stop was Hawaii. Second stop was the Philippines. Loved it in the Philippines. We went to Singapore. We went to Hong Kong. We were supposed to go to Australia, but we never made it to Australia. That was just the first tour. We came back. Alameda Naval Air Station was where the USS Midway was home ported, right up near San Francisco, Oakland area. And so we come back there for 6 months, and then another tour. We headed back out, pretty much the same cities, and I was loving every minute of it. So this was from 71 till 73. When 73 rolls around, it's time to get out. Of course, they want you to stay in, so they dangled embassy duty. And I'm like, embassy duty, that's great. I could be anywhere in the world. And then a couple of guys said, well, they could send you to Russia. They could send you to some cold climate, Poland, or anywhere there's a U.S. embassy. You could be there. And I said, I don't think I want any parts of that. A friend of mine was working at WCIN Radio here in Cincinnati, and he told me he was getting ready to leave the radio station. He was going to work in Dayton. So I got together, went down to the radio station, put together an audition tape, sent it to the radio station here, and set up an interview in March of 1973. That's when I was discharged from the Marine Corps, March of 1973, from a place called Treasure Island, right between Oakland and San Francisco. That's where I was discharged from. So I get back to Cincinnati, and when I did my audition tape, I put on there, remember, to hire the vet. And the guy, the general manager, he said, oh, that's pretty neat, okay. So he hired me. That was my radio job right out of the Marine Corps into the business that I wanted to get into before I joined the Marine Corps, which I thought that was going to be the end of my career as, trying to be a radio personality. But it all comes back to that choice I made back in 1970 after my number came up, number 14. If I had joined the Army, I don't think the outcome would have been the same. But something told me, join the Marine Corps. And from that moment on, it affected my life up until now. 45 years later, I'm still on the radio. I'm still on the radio doing what I love to do. And I like to say that was because of the U.S. Marines. And I just have to, the stars were aligned for me picking that, the number 14. I never would have thought my birthday would pop up number 14, being one of the first called. I figured I'd be the first one in Vietnam fighting. Who knows? I may not have come back, or I may have come back. I see some of my fellow Marines, PTSD. A lot of them are homeless, and I don't like to see that. When I see a guy with a sign, says he's a Marine vet, and he's homeless. So I figure I am one of the luckiest Marines ever. I met my wife at the radio station. So, everything all lined up with my choice to join the military back in 1970. The military wasn't as always, people didn't appreciate veterans like they do nowadays. I'm not sure when it all started, but everybody loves veterans now. Back during the Vietnam War, they called us baby killers and everything. It wasn't popular to be in the military back in the 70s. It wasn't popular at all. I guess it all changed with 9/11, maybe, the Iraqi war, but the tide has changed, and now people are really becoming to understand what it is to be a veteran, what a sacrifice all you veterans out there have made for this country. And now they're finally showing you appreciation, all the way from the NFL to the NBA, all these sports organizations. They go all out on Veterans Day. Now, it wasn't like this all the time. I'm not sure, when did this, the library start honoring veterans? I'm sure 80s? 64. That's a long time. So you were ahead of the curve here at the library. But you must admit, here recently, everything's veterans now. You know, everybody wants to honor the veterans, and that's great news to hear. But I just wanted to share with you my long tour in the Marine Corps, how everything lined up that affected the rest of my life. Like I say, 45 years later, I'm still doing what I was doing when I was in the Marine Corps, and I have to thank the military service for getting me where I am today. Thank you very much for inviting me. I appreciate it. Thank you.
So Lincoln, your entire distinguished career is based on the kind of uniform that you liked?
That's it. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Each year, our Hamilton County veterans are remembered here at the main library with memorial wreaths presented by local veterans organizations. District Chief Mark Sanders will present our first wreath on behalf of the Cincinnati Fire Department. Thank you. If you remain with your wreath. Our next wreath will be presented on behalf of the Cincinnati Police Department by Sergeant David Corlett and Robert Pope. Mr. James Shaw and Ms. Carol Quackenbush will present a wreath for the Greater Cincinnati Chapter of the Tuskegee Airmen. Our next wreath will be presented by Ms. Yvette Williams on behalf of the Greater Cincinnati Women's American Legion Post 644. Mr. James Kennedy and Mr. Jeremiah Miner will present a wreath on behalf of the Military Order of the Purple Heart, Chapter 3620. Our final wreath will be presented on behalf of the USS Hornet Breakfast Group. It will be presented by Mr. Ray Hughes. Let's give him a round of applause. Thank you all for your service. For over 240 years, our brave fighting men and women have protected our freedoms with their duty, courage, and selfless service. The line of heroes continues unbroken today. Currently, there are approximately 2 million active and reserve personnel serving in the United States Armed Forces. The legacy of our veterans continues to inspire our military to answer the call of duty. We know that freedom isn't free, and that the eternal vigilance is a price we always must pay for our liberty. At this time, we'd like to light the flame of remembrance and pay our tribute and respects to those who laid down their lives and for those who have suffered in the hope of peace for all. Here to light the flame of remembrance is Bob Huxall, former U.S. Marine officer and member of the Executive Committee of American Legion Post 630 in Blue Ash. After graduating from Purcell High School in 1959, Mr. Huxall entered the Marine Corps. He attended boot camp at Parris Island and infantry training at Camp Geiger, then received training in all phases of communications, including teletype and radio. He was stationed at Camp Lejeune for most of his career in the Marine Corps, with brief interludes in San Diego and Little Creek, Virginia. Mr. Huxall ran the crypto section and enjoyed breaking the codes of the Russian Navy running spy ships off the coast of North Carolina. Wrapping up his time in Gilbert Avenue 4th Communications Company in the Marine Reserves, Mr. Huxall spent a total of 6 years in defense of our country. Mr. Huxall.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Good morning. Good morning. Why do we light a flame of remembrance? What's the significance of a candle or a of the flame. Webster defines it as a flame or a fire that's kept burning to honor something or someone of national significance that will never end. Serves as a tribute and a commitment to a common goal. Virtually every country has some type of flame of remembrance. It started a little while ago. For example, Alexander the Great in 324 BC had a flame for his good friend Vespasian. The Temple of Delphi in 87 BC. It's been going on quite a while. Modern day, the most famous one is Jackie Kennedy, lighting on November 25th, 1963, the flame on her husband's graves at Arlington National Cemetery. In 2014, there were two men standing aside and looking at the Tower of London. Those two men had an idea. What if we filled the moat outside of the Tower of London with red poppies? They followed through on that thought. They gathered 21,000 plus volunteers, and they planted 888,246 red ceramic poppies in the moat around the Tower of London to honor the British and colonial people who lost their lives during World War I. This week, every night this week, they have had and lit 10,000 flames. People around the world light flames of remembrance. The list is not inconsequential. What we do here today is not meaningless, but rather in keeping with our human values of honoring those who gave some as well as those who gave all. Today that honor belongs to our veterans. When you leave here today, remember this. It is the veteran, not the preacher, who gave us the freedom of religion. It is the veteran, not the reporter, who gave us the power and the freedom of the press. It is the veteran and not the poet who has given us the freedom of speech. It is the veteran, not the campus or community organizer, who has given us the freedom of assembly. It is the veteran, not the attorney, who has given us the right to a free trial. And finally, it is the veteran, not the politician, who has given us the right to vote. It is with these very important thoughts that we here today pay our respects to all men and women who have served our great country. It is for them that I light this flame.
Thank you, Mr. Huxall, for those words to remember. This brings our 64th Veterans Day commemoration to a close, and thank you all for being here.